Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Right, so we are doing session 4 now. So this is session 4 of reflections of Surah al-Rum. And like I always say, if you guys have read anything new, anything that is gonna be beneficial inshallah, then put it in the comments. Let us have a look at it, and so that we can all benefit inshallah. Yeah, so wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, ya Haji. Okay, so I think we should start. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alright, so we are discussing Surah al-Rum. Right, and we mentioned quite a lot of things so far. And like I always mention about these sessions, the point of these sessions is not to do a translation of the surah. Okay, the point of this is more to do with the reflections. Yeah, that's what we're kind of after. And we want to understand how we're able to look at the surah, look at the themes in the surah, look at the patterns that are found in the surah, because every single surah in the Quran is a tightly knit set of verses, right? So every surah, even something like Surah Baqarah or something like Surah Ankabut that we did last time as well, it's a very tight knit surah, right? Surah Fatiha even. So every single thing that we read in the surah, we have to try and see some sort of a reflection in the surah. Yeah, we see some sort of a connection, how this surah works with each other. Okay, so that's the kind of main thing that we want to look at. And last time we mentioned about the names of Allah, and we also touched upon I think that was the main thing that we focused on, really, nothing else. So okay, so today I was thinking of looking at two things. So first of all, we are going to be looking at the ni'mas that Allah mentions in the surah, the bounties that Allah mentions. Right, that's the first thing we're going to look at. And the second thing we're going to look at is how is this surah so tightly connected with Rum. So Rum in them days was Byzantine, right? Was what we call Eastern Europe, Eastern European Rome. I mean, you can actually Google on YouTube, you can find the history of Rome and how Rome split up, how Europe split up, and you had Western Rome and you had Eastern Rome, right? And they were enemies of each other, right? They didn't really like each other that much. So, and it's very similar to like Russia and the rest of Europe. Yeah, Russia and the rest of Europe. There's kind of issues that you have with them. So yeah, it's a kind of very sort of like interesting, you can say, this relationship. So remember that they were ultimately idol worshippers, right? They were polytheists, and so the theme of polytheism is in them as well. Even though they did obviously, claim that they were monotheists, but the actions that they were doing were the actions of polytheists, you can say, right? So they were not like mushriks in the sense how Quraysh were mushriks, but they were, they had inside of them tendencies of shirk. So okay, so first of all, let's look at the ni'mas of this surah. Remember, we have to think to ourselves, let's look at each ni'mah that's mentioned. So first of all, the first one, Yansuru man yasha. So verse number 5, Allah helps and supports whoever He wants. Right, so this is the first thing that Allah mentions here. Yansuru man yasha. Allah, He supports anyone He wishes. Right, so this is a big ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a blessing from Allah, and Allah supporting someone is something that people should be thankful of. So this is the first thing. Number 2 is okay, خلق الله السماوات والأرض. Yeah, وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا. Allah creating the skies, Allah creating the earth. This is verse number 8. Allah creating the skies, the earth, and everything in between them. This is another ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can write this down, you can make a note of this as well. So it's like every single thing that's above, every single thing that's below, and every single thing that's between them, Allah has created those. Number 3. We're just looking at those ni'mas that are explicit bounties, okay? We're not looking at things as secondary bounties. So sometimes Allah might mention things like أَوَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, they're not traveling the land, and so the traveling is obviously a ni'mah from Allah. So that's not a direct ni'mah. جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات. So this is another ni'mah from Allah, third ni'mah that we collected so far. So messengers came to them and brought to them clear signs of Allah. Right, so this is a bounty from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so it's the third thing. Number 4. Verse number 11. Allahu yabda'u al-khalqa thumma yu'iduhu thumma ilayhi turja'un. Allah, He starts off the khalq, creation, and then He repeats it, He brings it back, and then to Him you will return. Right, so this is another bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah wants us to look at. Alright, so this is another one. Okay, let's move down then. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَهُمْ فِي رَوْضَةٍ يُحْبَرُونَ. Now you can take this as a ni'mah, meaning that this is their reward and this is a technically kind of a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we're not going to use it as a ni'mah here. We want to focus more on the dunyawi ni'mas, the ni'mas in the dunya that Allah has given us. Okay. فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ حِينَ تُمْسُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْبِحُونَ. So glory be to Allah. In other words, Allah is free of any defects. حِينَ تُمْسُونَ. So حِينَ تُمْسُونَ means when you go into the evenings and when you go into the mornings. So this going into the evenings and going into the mornings is a ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He allows us to be able to experience the evening, like now. He allows us to be able to experience the morning, like maybe some of you guys in the morning. And وَلَهُ الْحَمْدُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَعَشِيًّا وَحِينَ تُظْهِرُونَ. Okay, so لَهُ الْحَمْدُ is not a direct ni'mah. We're not going to count it as a direct ni'mah. تُظْهِرُونَ is obviously, right? So going into the afternoon. يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. So verse number 19, He takes out the living from the dead and the dead from the living. This is clearly a ni'mah from Allah. Okay, so this is like scientifically you can understand this is how life works in the universe. There seems to be this something coming out of something else. Yeah. So one energy coming out of another energy, or one object coming out of another object. Yeah. So this kind of pattern that you see in the universe. Okay. Okay. Verse number 20. Right. So verse number 20. وَمِنْ آيَاتٍ خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ. So Allah creating us from the soil is a ni'mah from Allah. ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله واسق وعليكم السلام يا حمزة. Okay, so this is another ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah has created you from turab. He's created you from soil. So Allah creating us from soil, what does that exactly mean? Does that mean we were soil and then we became humans? Does that mean that we were soil and we evolved into humans? Is that what Allah is saying? Or is Allah saying that from the essence of turab, He created you from the essence of turab? So from the essence, the same ingredients you find in the earth, Allah created humans from that. So that's why we're compatible with earth, because our essence is made up of. So this is another bounty that Allah is telling us about. Verse number 21. And from His signs, خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. He created for you azwaj. He created for you compatible partners. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. So that you can find peace with them. Yeah. So in other words, the compatible partners that He's created for you is so that you find this compatibility with them. And this is something which is a ni'mah from Allah. Yeah. And on top of that, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And He has made between your azwaj, your compatible partners, He's made mawadda, mutual love, and rahmah, and mercy. So this is another bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, this is another ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, then وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and from his signs, creation. This is verse number 22. Creating the sky and the earth, we mentioned that before. وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, the differences in the tongues. So differences in the tongues, this is a ni'mah in itself. And then, remember we said, this is something that we need to ponder over, we need to think about. How did humans reach this level that their tongues are different? That when they speak, there are different dialects, there's different pronunciations, there's different languages out there, different ways they write. All of these things, you have to kind of do reverse engineering, right? So you look at the different languages, you work backwards, and then you try to figure out why is there differences in the languages. اختلاف ألسنتكم, right? So this is also something which is very important as well. And likewise, اختلاف of the alsina can also possibly indicate towards the anatomical part of the body, the tongue. So everyone's tongue is different. It's like everyone's tongue is unique. Everyone's tongue is specific. So much so that you can have passwords based on people's voices. So when people speak, their tongue will actually be something which is unique. And this is something, again, this is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because having uniqueness in the universe, having exactly the same thing is not an amazing thing. You can have iPhones that are exactly the same. You can have Samsungs that are exactly the same. You can have laptops that are exactly the same. Cars that are exactly the same. But you can never find two humans that are exactly the same. So having two humans that are not exactly the same is a sign that there is some power beyond our power that is allowing this to happen. Okay, alwanikum, and your difference in the shades of your skin. Yeah, alwanikum, your colors. So the human body has different parts of the body has different colors. The face has a different color. Different parts of the face have different colors. The lips have a different color. Skin on your torso, a different color. On your legs, on your soles, inside your mouth, a different color. And then the different colors between different humans as well. So you have some humans that are dark in complexion, some that are light in complexion, some in between. Okay, so these are what we call the ikhtilaf of alwan. So all of these are ni'mas of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's reminding. Now remember, when we look at these ni'mas, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to go through a few. I'm going to go back now, and then we're going to look at these ni'mas that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. How does it fit in with this surah? Mentioning ghulibat al-Rum, that Rome has been dominated. Why is it important for us to focus on this? Why is it important for us to try and understand the importance of these bounties within the context of this surah? Okay, let's do a few more ni'mas. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ مَنَامُكُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, and from Allah's bounties is sleep. Yeah, sleeping. بِاللَّيْلِ, at night. وَالنَّهَارِ, and in the day. وَابْتِغَاؤُكُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, and you seeking from Allah's bounty. You seeking Allah's bounty, people working. Again, this idea of sleep. So sleep is something we take for granted. But if we look into the science behind sleeping, of how humans sleep, how humans, they try to shut off their system. You can say rest for a few hours every day. This is also a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does it happen at a molecular level? What happens in the body that the body naturally just shuts off? How does this work? How has Allah put this into human beings? And what functions does it serve? And what's the benefit of having sleep? And if you don't have sleep, all these things can be looked into. Bil-layli wan-nahar, at night and in day. So some people sleep at night, a lot of people rather, and some people sleep in the day. So again, this is something that we need to ponder over. وَابْتِغَاؤُكُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, and then this humans searching for bounties, humans searching for sustenance, humans this kind of motivation that humans have to earn, this motivation that humans have to look for sustenance, right? And then let's work backwards then. So there's a guy who wants to become the CEO of a company. Now you got to work backwards now. How does he become the CEO? What qualifications does he need? What experiences in life does he need? And then before that, what kind of things does he have to go through in his youth? Likewise, a person who wants to become a taxi driver, the same. Person who wants to become a teacher, the same. Person who wants to clean the roads, the same. Every single individual has his motivations. And if you look at it in the world, there are different ways that people are seeking sustenance from Allah. Yeah, I don't know. Are you guys experiencing lag in the live stream? Are you guys experiencing any lag in here? I don't know why there seems to be a bit of a lag. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so I don't know. I think these past few days, I think the internet's been a bit playing up. I think it's probably holidays, so a lot of people are free, so they're probably using anyway. So going back to what we were saying, we were talking about this idea of manamukum bil-layli wa ibtigha'ukum min fadlihi. In other words, this seeking sustenance, seeking reward now. How does this work? Seeking an earning. Why is it that some people, they want to seek a high wage? Some people are happy with a low wage. How does all of this fit in with the big picture that we have? So again, this is something which we kind of look into, right? So these are the kind of things that we look at, the bounties of Allah, and how does it fit in with this surah. Okay, last set of ayahs. Min ayatihi, verse number 24. Yurikum al-barqa khawfan wa tam'an. He shows you lightning. Allah showing you lightning in the state of fear and in the state of hope. Some people, when they see lightning, they become scared. Some people, when they see lightning, they have tama'. So I want you guys to put in the comments as well. Whenever we go past these kind of bounties of Allah, just put in the comments what reflections you get from this. Like, what comes to your mind when I tell you about how humans have different languages and how that reminds you of Allah, or how humans have different colors and how that reminds you of Allah, and how humans have these different sort of like aims and objectives in life, and this reminds you of Allah, and how Allah has created lightning, and then this lightning is kind of something which for some people in the world it brings fear. People are scared of lightning, and for some other people in the world it creates this hope, right? وَيُنَزِّلُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. He brings down from the sky water. So again, now this rain that falls from the sky, this is also something which is a ni'mah, a bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does this fit in with the ayats that we've mentioned, right? How does it fit in with, like we were saying, the Rum, Surah al-Rum. Okay. فَيُحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. And then He gives life, Allah, He gives life to the land through it, with the rain, after its death. Right? How does this fit in as well? Okay, so now let's go back to the beginning of the surah and let's look at these ayats, these bounties of Allah, and let's try to fit it in with Surah Rum. And I want you to think about this as well. Remember, Rum was the most powerful nation on the face of the earth at that time. It had the strongest military, it had the strongest, you can say, economy, it had strong ties, financial ties with other countries. It was well established. They had education systems. They were experts in building roads. They had so much. They were a rich culture, you can imagine, right? And from the architecture, we know what these guys had achieved. So when this verse was revealed, like we said, غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم, Rum has been dominated. Rum has been crushed. Rum has been conquered. غُلِبَتِ Rum has been dominated. Now then after this, in your mind, what comes to your mind? Right? So think about it. So if you were there and you heard, let's say tomorrow, China has been dominated. China overnight, China has been taken over. Yeah, غُلِبَتِ Rum. China has been dominated. China has been conquered. What would you think in your mind? Like, what emotions would go through? Would you be happy? Would you be sad? Would it be something that brings fear into you, that if they are being dominated, imagine what's going to happen to us? What would happen in your mind? So keeping this in mind, let's look at the first one, bounty that we mentioned. يَنْصُرُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah, He supports whoever He wills. Right? So this is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. He supports whoever He wills. Now, fitting it back onto Rome, we have to remember Rome is a non-Muslim nation, right? The message of Islam hasn't reached them yet. Remember, when the message of Islam has not reached a nation, according to the Quran, Allah will not punish them. Yeah, Allah does not punish a nation until a messenger reaches them. So the Rome was basically a kind of Christian, you can say, a denomination of Christianity. So Rome at that time, Allah had supported them. So the support that came from Allah, you have to think about it, that how does it fit in for us? That if Allah can support Rome, why can't Allah support the Muslims? So if the Muslims are living in a time of fear and hostility, then why can't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala support them? So yansuru man yasha. This is the first thing that Allah reminds us. This is a big bounty of Allah, that Allah supports a non-Muslim nation. Then imagine how Allah would deal with Muslim nations. People who are standing up for His cause, people who are fighting in His path, people who are believing in Him and submitting themselves to Him as well. Okay, the second one that He mentions, the bounty that He mentions, is خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضُ مَا بَيْنَهُمَا. So creation of the skies and the earth, and that is in between them. So if any of you guys watch these kind of like discovery documentaries about space and about earth, you guys would know what I'm talking about. Yeah, which is this idea of the vastness of existence, the vastness of space. You know, what is in space, what's in the earth, what's in between space and the earth, the stars, the planets, all of these things. This is also a bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why does Allah mention this in context of the ghulibatir Rum, and that the Rum will dominate? So here, what comes to my mind, I don't know what comes to your mind, put in the comments, yeah, is that Allah here is indicating that we should never become overawed. Our awe should never become stronger for anything besides Allah. So in other words, we should never become overawed by Rome more than Allah. Yes, we can become overawed. Yeah, we can be filled with awe and overwhelmed regarding Rome. Yes, but it cannot exceed Allah. In other words, the awe that we have for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should always be more. Definitely, without doubt. So here, خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا. Allah has created all of these. So imagine a big sort of like map of the entire universe, and then try to find Earth, try to find the solar system, and then try to find Earth, and then in that Earth try to find Rome, how small Rome is. So in the entire plan of things, these are all nothing compared to what Allah has created. So this, when you kind of zoom out, yeah, sometimes this is what has to happen, that when you see calamities, when you see hardships and difficulties, what happens is you become so overwhelmed with emotions and what's happening around you, that you forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what you have to do is you have to zoom out. So if you ever have a calamity or something, just think to yourself, close your eyes and just zoom out, right? Think to yourself, look, where are you? You're in a building, you're in a house, and then zoom out. Where's your house? It's in a road. And then zoom out like Google Maps, and then you keep zooming out and out and out. Eventually, when you look at your location to the entire earth and how many people are living on the earth, you begin to see your sort of affliction as being minuscule compared to the vastness of the earth and people. So the same thing we can think about over here. Okay, the next let's go to the next one then. So the next one is جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات. Messengers came to them, right? So messengers coming to these people. How is this a bounty? How is this a bounty? And how does it fit in with Rome? Specifically, how does it fit in with this idea of a super nation, a power nation? Yeah. So I want you to, in the comments, write this down. What comes to your mind? So if we're talking about this superpower Rome, and that all of a sudden overnight news has come that this has been overpowered, and then Allah promises that in a few years, within 9 years, Rome is going to dominate once again. I want you to put in the comments, how does this ni'mah of Allah, جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات, that the messengers brought to them clear signs, how does this bounty fit in here? Put it in the comments. I want to see what you guys come out with, because we have to think about the messengers that came. What was their role as a bounty? Like what kind of a bounty did they come with? So remember, we talked about the help of Allah, Nasr Allah. Allah helps anyone He wishes, Muslim, non-Muslim. It's up to Allah. And that Allah's power compared to the power of Rome is like not even a dot on the map of the universe. Yeah, not even an atom size in the map of the universe. And then Allah sent to people Rusul, messengers, that brought clear signs about who Allah was. How is this a bounty? So what comes to my mind, I don't know what comes to your mind, but what comes to my mind is that the messengers coming to the people is them bringing direction for mankind, like bringing instructions from Allah in order for people to be able to live their lives in a more optimal manner. So this is a ni'mah which is related to a divine revelation. So divine revelation itself changes the face of human society. So human society, if you were to just leave human society as it is, let's say you did an experiment, and you left human society on earth, and you did not bring any divine intervention to them, how would they fare? So the easiest way to look at it is look at, for example, an indigenous, like South American indigenous rainforest tribe, or a tribe living in, let's say, the Andaman Islands, right, of India. So if you look at them, they are still living exactly the same way that they've been living for hundreds of years. It's a very, very, hunter-gatherer lifestyle. It is very territorial, very, you can say, animal-like. They have their territory. They fight for their food. If they have to fight other tribes, and you can see the simplicity of how they function. But then all of a sudden you see in history, what's happened is lots of people, they stopped living like that. Something happened to them. Divine revelation came to them. And this divine revelation gave them all the advancements. Yeah, and the more advancements you see in a society, that's a sign of them investing their past, their history in divine revelation. So if you think about, for example, Europe has advanced where it's reached. If you look historically, you will find the people who were pushing for these advancements were people that were inspired by religion, people that were inspired by the teachings of Jesus, or by the teachings of even Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, because Spain was a big part of Europe, Muslim Spain. So in other words, advancements in society is actually, you can say, a byproduct of divine revelation. So divine revelation, it kind of like gives a head start to mankind to push themselves forward. So جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات. So when you look at Rome, you look at how advanced they become, militarily, financially, economically, and in every other aspect, you can find clearly, you will definitely find behind some sort of a divine inspiration that they learned from, they sought. So again, this is, but this does not necessarily mean that these people are on the right path, because then Allah says, ما كان الله ليظلمهم. It does not befit Allah to oppress them, but they were oppressing themselves. So when you take the divine revelation, it doesn't mean you're going to become good. You have to apply that in the correct way, and these people were not correcting it. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah MP. Wa alaikum assalam, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. Enjoying the series. Thank you very much. So, okay. So, everyone understand up to there, yeah? So you get the idea that, look, when we look at the bounties in this surah, try to fit the bounties back, how it fits back to this idea of Rome becoming dominated, and then Rome rising from the ashes, and then taking over again. Yeah. So the third bounty we mentioned is جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات. Okay. Did anything else come to your minds? Put in the comments. Okay. Next. Then he says, we're looking at bounties, remember. Allahu yabda'ul khalqa thumma yu'iduhu. Okay, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Iskhan. Arju an kuntum bi khair, alhamdulillah. Messengers as bounties, the nations have been given all the worldly comforts and riches, and the message came to them as the opportunity to rise up in rank spiritually. Who will pass test? Definitely. Excellent points. Very good points. There's beautiful points there. Yeah, so remember, the Quran is a kind of like a book that will take you into the past. When you read ayats, your mind will go to the past. And when you read some ayats, emotionally you'll become charged. When you read some ayats, it brings awe into your heart. This is how the Quran affects people. Yeah, it's known for this. So Allah in verse number 11 says, Allahu yabda'ul khalq. Allah is the one that starts the creation. In other words, like for example, someone can take a chicken, and let's say someone gets a chicken and mates it with a rooster, and then the chicken lays an egg, and that egg hatches and it becomes a chick. So sometimes what can happen is people might become confused, they might become duped into thinking that they have some sort of involvement in the reproduction of a chick. Yeah, and likewise nowadays scientists, doctors, they will through artificial insemination, they will fertilize an egg, and then they will make it grow in the lab, and then they'll insert it inside of a womb, and then they think that they are the ones that brought this out. And in the news, that's what they say. Scientists have developed, scientists have cracked the code, scientists have created a limb or whatever. So whenever they say this, what they tend to do is they confuse the lines between them and Allah. Yeah, they attribute the power of Allah to themselves, which is obviously a very grave thing. Now, if they meant it metaphorically, that's fine. But if they meant it realistically and they deny the existence of God, then it's problematic. And this again is what Allah is here maybe referring to. Allahu yabda'ul khalq. Allah is saying Allah is the one that starts creation. In other words, if these people think they can compete with Allah, let them start creation. Allahu yabda'ul khalq. So the jumla starts off with Allah. Allah doesn't say yabda'ullahu al-khalq. Allah says Allahu yabda'ul khalq. It's like saying that Allah and Allah only starts off creation. Allah is the one. Indeed, Allah is the one that starts the creation. So this whole creation process that starts off, who started it off? If you ask the scientists and they say the Big Bang, okay, let's for argument's sake accept the Big Bang. Who started it off then? Who was the beginner? And we believe in the Quran, Allah says, Huwa al-awwal wal-akhir. Allah is the first and Allah is the last. So again, this superpower mentality that's out there, let's call it a superpower mentality, like the Romans, right? People thought that they could never be crushed. But what happened to them? They were crushed, and it shocked the whole of the world, ripple effects in the whole of the world. Again, China, USA, other superpowers in the world, people have this awe about them. But we have to remember that all the advancements that they've made, even creating the atom bomb, or sending people to space, or bringing communication so close together, this is nothing compared to what Allah does. Allah is the one that enabled all of this to happen. Allahu yabda'ul khalq thumma yu'iduhu, and then Allah will bring it back. Okay, so this is something which they deny. So they deny the coming back, the resurrection, you can say. Okay, next, the next bounty, and you put it in the comments as well. What kind of things do you understand from this Allah mentioning here? Why does Allah mention the starting of the creation? Like, how does this starting of creation fit in with this idea of Rome being dominated? Yeah, because like if it's just random, then it doesn't really make sense why this ayah is unique in the surah. Then it doesn't make sense what a surah is, because then a surah has nothing to define it from another surah, except a person might say, if you were to switch some ayats from another surah into this surah and someone didn't realize, then people will say, what's the unique thing about a surah? What's the point of having a surah? Does that make sense? So this is why when we have every ayah is like, I see as like, have you ever seen like a molecule under the, what is it called, microscope? So when you look at a molecule under a microscope, it just looks so all connected together, so beautiful, everything connected. And then if you look at it through a what's that called, electron microscope, electron microscope, then it just looks so amazing, at another level of the interconnection between all the molecules and all the parts of the molecules and so forth. So this is what I believe the surah is. In reality, the surah is like this. It's so tightly connected. It's just that the reader has to know how to approach the surah. And then the surah it creates inside of the person this understanding of how to read the Quran. And then you see why it's impossible for anyone to be able to come out with the surah. Why it's so impossible. Okay. For example, people are in the awe of Elon Musk and his futuristic advancements of electric cars, SpaceX, etc. But he is a normal human like the rest of us. That would be exactly question of the day. That's what you have to remember. And this is why the Sahaba, if you think about it, if you read about the Sahaba, and they used to go to the palaces of the Persians and the palaces of Rome, and they weren't afraid, it was because this belief became so engraved into their hearts. It became so firm in their mind that they couldn't see how their wealth and how their army and how their strength could compare to Allah. They couldn't see it, right? They could only see that these people are, like Khalid bin Walid, when he was in front of the army, and he said, with me are men who love death so much more than your men love the taste of wine. Yeah, I have men with me that love death so much more than your men loving wine. Yeah, so this is again, something which we kind of sometimes overlook. We forget. We don't realize how the Quran, how the Quran, it kind of like shapes people's minds. Our minds needs to be shaped, and when our minds become shaped, then we can achieve so much in the dunya, inshallah. Okay, so next. Okay, the next bounty. Let's look at the next bounty. فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ حِينَ تُمْسُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْبِحُونَ. Right, so subhanallah actually means that Allah is free of all defects. So it's like saying, I claim that Allah is free of all defects. Hina tumsuna, when all of you go into the evening, and when all of you go into the morning, Allah is free of all defects. So how does this fit into, now the question is, this bounty of Allah, how does this fit into Rome becoming dominated, a superpower becoming dominated? Right? How does this fit into that? In the mornings and every evenings, when the sun sets and when the sun rises, morning and evening, this switching of you can say the light, or switching of day and night, this is something which is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah, in these times, this is something where you see the perfection of Allah. In other words, you see the lack of weakness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the absence of any sort of defect in Allah. So how does this kind of fit in with the concept of a superpower being dominated, being overpowered? Yeah. What do you guys think? What comes to your mind? Because I want you guys to think about it in today's terms. Shah Waliullah rahimahullah does this in Fawzul Kabir as well. So he encourages the reader of the Quran to see the bounties, like see the ayat in today's terms. Right? How, let's say, the rabbis of Bani Israel were mentioned in the Quran. He shows how you can fit it on to corrupt religious authorities of today, and how the people of, let's say, of Fir'aun, the followers of Fir'aun, who were oppressing and killing innocent people. You can see in the form of genocide today, of armies who follow an evil dictator and carry out his evil instructions. So what do you guys think? Come on. What comes to your mind? So حين تمسون وحين تصبحون, when you go into the evening. So remember, going into the evening is like this time in UK. We're going into the evening, and then going into the day. So why is this mentioned? For how does this fit in with the idea? What do you guys think? How does this fit in with the idea of the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cross-referencing that with Rome? Okay, so whilst you guys are typing, I'll just mention some of the reflections that I get from this. So first of all, there's several things we have to understand here. Why these times, tumsuna and tusbihuna? So this seems to be something which all humans recognize. All humans base their day around these two changing times. So tumsuna is to go into the evening. Yes, go into the evening. Yeah, it's called tumsuna, and that includes the night time as well, after Maghrib. And everyone sees this big shift. So what usually happens in this time is your body actually starts to relax. You come back from work. You become hungry. You kind of change, your mood changes. You go home to your family. And then in the morning, what happens is you get up from one state, one mode of functioning, which is sleep mode, into active mode. You go from being hungry and eating something. You go from your family to work, etc. So this is the first thing. I'm giving some sort of like tips and clues here of how you can look at it. So this is one of the interesting things about tumsuna and tusbihuna. And remember, Allah is speaking to us here. So because the fi'l is mentioned, hina tumsuna, this would mean this is something that's repetitive. It's like a cyclic thing that happens. Tumsuna tusbihuna, tumsuna tusbihuna. Just like one of you guys, Eshan, you put up that cyclic, the rings in the Quran. Yeah, and I think this is a very important thing as well. You can have cyclic rings not just in a surah, you can have them in like ayats, individual ayats and letters. You can see this kind of pattern. Yeah, and this is something which you find in molecules as well. If you look at under the microscope, you find these patterns at various levels. The second thing in this ayah is hina tumsuna wa hina tusbihun. Now Allah doesn't say hina tusbihuna wa hina tumsun. Interesting thing there. Yeah, so why is that for? And finally, subhanallahi. Why mention the Allah being free of all defects, especially at these two times? So the Romans have various gods and various aspects of life and elements of the universe. Allah is reminding that it's all maybe in comparison to the belief, definitely. And that would be an interesting thing if someone could do some good research into Roman beliefs at that time, meaning at the time of the Sahaba. So obviously throughout time their belief system was shifting. Yeah, and that's a sign, because early Romans were pagans, and then the later Romans that accepted Christianity. Yeah, Constantine after him, when they accepted Christianity, they kind of changed their beliefs, but their beliefs were still evolving, shifting, because then they had this kind of like, they came out with the Nicaea Treaty, or whatever it was, belief creed, that God, Jesus is the Son of God. They came out with that. So it kind of just shows how imperfect their understanding of God is. Yeah. Electrons spin around the nucleus. Yeah, exactly that spinning sort of thing that happens. So subhanallah again. So this may be indication towards the perfection of Allah. That when we see change in human society, we see perfection in everything else. So when we see Rome being conquered and crushed, what do we see? We realize, perfection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was something which Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he called his people and he said, let's worship the stars. And then the stars disappeared and he said, no, we can't worship stars. And then he said, let's worship the moon. And then they looked at the moon and he said, well, the moon disappears. And it disappeared. He said, that can't be God. And then he looked at the sun. قال هذا ربي هذا أكبر. This is the greatest, this is the biggest thing in the sky. فلما أفل, yeah, when it disappeared, the sun set. He says, this can't be God. Yeah. إني وجهت وجهي الذي فطر السماوات والأرض. And at that moment, he showed the people how perfect Allah is. The belief in Allah that Ibrahim alayhi salam brought to them was so perfect, and it fitted exactly onto the definition of what Allah is, what God is. So again, فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ حِينَ تُمْسُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْبِحُونَ. We see the perfection. And maybe this is a reason why we're encouraged to do the dhikr of Allah after Fajr more and after Asr more. Yeah, these are two times where the Prophet ﷺ, mentioned about doing the dhikr of Allah, profusely. Yeah, and in the Quran as well, it comes, many times. غُدُوًا وَعَشِيًّا. Yeah, so غُدُوًا وَعَشِيًّا, morning and in the evening time. So these kind of things are kind of like a reminder to us as well. Okay, وَلَهُ الْحَمْدُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَعَشِيًّا وَحِينَ تُظْهِرُونَ. And حِينَ تُظْهِرُونَ, so this is the third time of the day. حِينَ تُظْهِرُونَ, when the afternoon time comes. So afternoon, تُظْهِر, ظَهَرَ يَظْهَرُ, it means to become apparent, and أَظْهَرَ يُظْهِرُ is to go into afternoon. So it seems as though afternoon time is a significant time. Maybe it's because things, the sun shows, like even the sun, it shows a movement to show that the sun is weak as well. It kind of reaches its pinnacle, zenith, and then it starts to go down. And so at this moment you realize Allah is perfect, because there is nothing that in Allah that changes. Allah is consistent. Allah's laws are consistent. Allah's belief system is consistent. And the things that these people are coming out with is a flawed system. Okay, so this is the bounties of Allah. Let's do another one then. So verse number 19. يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. So this is something which, if you look at this kind of bounty, you have to think very carefully, how does this fit on with the crushing of Rome? Yeah, think about it. I want you to think about this. There's several points that will come to your mind. Yeah, subhanallah. Definitely, Anwar. Definitely. If you think about these verses with the reflection, you can see the sophistication of the Quran. And sadly, lots of Muslims around the world, they have this kind of like belief that the Quran is from God, but they can't prove that it's from God. Like they can't experience it for themselves. So if you are in a situation where, all your life you've been claiming that the Quran is from God, but you've never experienced it, and you can't prove it, you can't do these two things. It's like sometimes you think to yourself, isn't that like kind of like the belief of how another religion reveres their holy book or their holy script? It's just that they can't prove it's true, they can't experience the truth in it, but it's like from a young age they've just been like revering the book and standing up for it, which I'm not saying is wrong. I'm not saying Muslims are doing wrong. What I'm saying is that the point of the Quran is a book of recitation, reflection, pondering. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you guys agree with that? Yeah, I mean, personally, I think how amazing it would be if we could go through the entire Quran in a reflection kind of way. Yeah, and then when Ramadan comes, and then you read the Quran, it just becomes a whole different thing. You forget the entire world around you. You forget, yourself even, and you just become, overwhelmed with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so I don't want to make it too long. I'm just going to carry on for about 10-15 minutes more, and that's it. Stop. Okay, so come on. So yukhrijul hayya min al-mayt. He, Allah, He brings out life from death, from something dead. So yukhrijul hayy, He brings something living out of something dead. I mean, I know a lot of people might have heard things like scholars mentioning things like, the chicken is brought out from the egg, and the egg is kind of dead, and the chicken comes out of it, and then from the chicken, which is living, a dead thing comes out, an egg, and then that egg grows, and then it becomes a chick. So there is this kind of like cyclic system that takes place as well, of yukhrijul hayya min al-mayyit wa yukhrijul mayyita min al-hayy. So you can see this kind of loop. So living becomes dead, and then dead becomes living, and then living becomes dead. Allah is to be praised throughout the day and remembered at night and at noon. Ayah 19, definitely. Yeah, so again, this seems to indicate also towards the 5 times prayer as well. In other words, that we are structuring our day around the most important, significant points in the day, which remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so this yukhrijul hayy min al-mayyit, one thing that came to my mind was, look, first of all, this is one thing, there's several things, but one thing is that Rome cannot claim this. Like the scientists of Rome, or the scientists of today, you can say, the expert scientists of today cannot claim that they can bring out from the living dead and from the dead living. They can't do this. Maybe they might attempt to, let's say, take from a drop of sperm, fertilize an egg, and then they claim that they've taken something dead and brought something living. Well, obviously we know that is just all they're doing is what Allah in nature has set. All they're doing is facilitating it. So they're just facilitators. They are not really people who are actively doing this. But in reality, these people have to admit that they can't do this, and that the way that they claim, obviously nature, they'll say, look how beautiful nature is. A tree dies, and then in the winter there's nothing, and then in the spring and summer it starts to grow again. Yeah, and they say this kind of rejuvenation or regeneration is an amazing feature of nature. So you see what they're doing? They're not really thinking about, like, if you ask them, okay, you're saying nature does this, yeah? Let's go backwards. So where did nature get this from? And they go, okay, well, it was evolved. Okay, let's go backwards. Where did the first time this happened come from? Who gave it this ability? How comes there is this structure, this kind of like systematic structure that nature has? So they have to admit that there is something that's happening which they don't know. And, a lot of people get confused by what they say, because a lot of people seem to think that what they're saying is making more sense, but it's not making more sense, because they are actually shifting away from the real issue, which is who gave nature this power. Makes me think that dead animals and run food, Allah allows insects and animals to rise. Exactly, yeah. And that's something that, another second point, which is Rome, which was crushed, it kind of died, didn't it? Ghulibat. is a form of death, and from that death arises life again. So in other words, from a dead society can come life, from a living society can come death. Even societies can go through this system as well, of going through life and death, life and death. So societies rise, societies die, societies rise, societies die. Same thing can happen with Muslims as well. Then وَيُحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا, and Allah, He gives life to the death, to the earth after its death. Yeah, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually gives life to the dead. No one can deny that this system that Allah has created is a, even when you hear David Attenborough on the TV when he talks about the plains of Africa, and he says how the rains come and it gives life to the dead land. This is something that even they can't deny, right? But the question obviously is, who is doing this? And as Muslims, we know that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, let's move on to the next point, which is وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ, and from His signs is that He created you from turab, from soil. Now, if you hear that, if Allah Almighty is telling you that He created you from soil, it's like a shock. Like the first time someone hears this, they're going to think, wait a minute, Allah created you from earth. They obviously in their minds, the Romans in their minds, and even scientists today in their minds, will be thinking of, Allah created you from earth. No, that's wrong, that is. But if you think about it, if you think about the depth of what is being said over here, is Allah creating people from earth doesn't necessarily mean that Allah created them from the earth, that He took the earth and He created from the earth. It could also mean from the essence of the earth, like the ingredients found inside the earth. They were taken out and they were structured in such a way that created this first human being. Yeah, so in other words, humans and earth are related together, are related. In other words, there's a common denominator between the two. The essence of the earth is found inside of humans. And this is why humans are more compatible with earth than they are with another planet. Because the way that they've been designed, the skin, the eyes, the brain, the fluid inside their body, the blood, the capillaries and arteries that they have inside of them, all of them are more compatible with earth. And Dubai was a barren land, and Allah gave civilization to their modern times. So what are you indicating? Think about it. What do you think is going to happen? Yeah, so غُلِبَتِ al-Rum, such a powerful nation Rum was in them days, and it can easily happen to any nation today. Okay, so this is another thing. خَلَقُ مِن تُرَابٍ, He created you from turab. So if you look at the essence of man, where does man actually come from? Turab. Some Mufassirin actually go into this and say Allah created Adam from turab, and then Adam was obviously the first of the creation, and then He created a female for Adam, and then they kind of procreated, and this continuation of procreation continues all the way till today. And some of the Mufassirin, in the tafsirs, they say things like He created you from turab, meaning that the food that you eat, the food that you eat, this comes from animals, or this comes from plants, and both of them, they get their sustenance from plants, and the plants come from the earth, and they take that route. Those Mufassirin, they take that route to kind of explain it. Whichever way it is, still people are making an effort to live on the moon. I mean, it's not to say that people will not be able to go outside the earth, but they will have to admit that the only planet that is going to be conducive to them is an earth-based planet. Like the ingredients that are found on earth, this is the planet upon which they are going to be able to live more easily. And if they were to live on the moon or another planet, Quran's not saying that they can't do it. It's just that it's going to be extremely difficult compared to living on earth. Okay. فَإِذَا أَنْتُمْ بَشَرٌ تَنْتَشِرُونَ, all of a sudden you become bashar, you become this human creation which has less hair on its body. Bashar means like you can see more of the skin. تَنْتَشِرُونَ, you spread around the earth. Again, this is another bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if you think about the Romans, where did the Romans come from? Like, why is it that they had taken over that part of the region of the world? Originally, if you go back in history, where would the Romans stem from? Which part of the world, which country? And how was it that they were able to spread? Why are humans able to spread around the earth, and let's say a polar bear can't do the same? Or let's say, a lion can't do the same, even though a lion is stronger than a human. What has Allah put inside this human, which is turab based, which is based from the soil of the earth, that has allowed human beings to actually live on almost any surface of the earth or even the water He wishes. Yeah, so this is another bounty of Allah. So indicating that, look, that maybe it's indicating that Rome has achieved what it achieved, and it had reached, the furthest parts of wherever it reached, not because they were, divine, not because that they were gods, not because that they deserve to be worshipped. No, simply because of what Allah had placed inside of human beings. Even Muslims can achieve that. In other words, Arabs who generally didn't move out their locality, they stayed within, Makkah, Medina, the Khalij, you can say, Hijaz. They didn't really go out too much. But Allah may be indicating here that Arabs, even there's an indication that one day they'll be spreading around the world. The Muslims will be spreading around the world. Islam will spread around the world. Tantashirun. Okay, let's do one more, then we finish. See, I wanted to cover quite a lot, but it's just time. And the other thing is, there is so much depth to these ayats that once you start, you can clearly peel away all the different layers of thought. Yeah, there's layers and layers of thought that we're kind of trying to peel away. And sometimes some of you may peel away more than even me. And that's why I enjoy it when you guys put your comments in the comments, because we can see how we're thinking about this. And I'm trying to bring it back to Rome, right? But you can actually look at it from different angles as well, of Allah's support. That this idea of Allah's support, for example, like this yukhrijul hayy min mayyit, this is how Allah's support comes. Sometimes Allah's support will come. A nation has to be defeated for Allah's support to come. Yeah, so sometimes this is what has to happen. Okay. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. And from Allah's signs is that Allah has created for you compatible partners or varieties. So azwaj. And these azwaj are so compatible that this is like the missing link that you're waiting for. Right? So just like a jigsaw puzzle. When the piece is the zawj, and this piece has to fit in with this one for it to look right. So this is the same thing with humans. Humans, Allah has created for them. He hasn't just created them just on its own. He's actually created them in pairs and partners and groups, right, that they can function together. So this idea of, having this kind of compatibility between us, this is also something we can actually do reverse engineering and look backwards and think to ourselves how human manufacturing is very, you can say, deficient in this department. That when they create something which is just one. They can't create things which have to rely on compatible with other things, right? But Allah, He creates this compatibility of human beings, and it's such that it brings peace into their lives when they find each other. And this kind of compatibility is such that just like you have a charger and you have a phone, let's say, the phone might be connected to the charger and it kind of receives its charge. This compatibility brings two things inside of them. Mawaddatan, mutual love for each other, and rahmah. This is, in other words, indicating maybe how humans spread across the earth. Humans will spread across the earth when they're able to live in communities. This is what makes them unique from animals. Animals can live in communities maybe, but they can't work as a team. The bees can do that. Maybe that's why the Quran mentions bees as well. But humans can live together, function together, and work together, teamwork. Yeah, whether it's between a husband and wife, whether it's between parents and children, whether it's between neighbors, whether it's between... It's indication of mawaddatan wa rahmah. These are the two kind of ingredients to create this kind of peace in a community. You need to have individuals who have love for one another, and you have individuals who have mercy on one another. And if you remove mawadda and you remove rahmah, what you're going to have is you're going to have a network, but they're not going to be able to function for too long. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And there are signs for those people who think. Yeah. So in other words, it's again this idea of how does it fit in with Rome, that there has to be this compatibility, there has to be this mutual sort of getting on with Rome. You have to kind of meet with them, you have to buy from them, sell from them. Maybe your society has to interact with them. And maybe this is why the Quran has even allowed for men to marry Christian women as well. Yeah, this is something which is Surah Fatiha is what I would call the nucleus of Quran, where it's 7 ayats encapsulated every part of the Quran. This surah seems to echo for me Rabbil Alameen, that He is the Lord of MashaAllah world. It puts into perspective. Definitely Surah Fatiha is a powerful, very, very I mean, I without exaggeration, I think if we were to do reflection on Surah Fatiha, 50 lessons of reflection wouldn't be enough. 50. Teamwork makes the dream work. Teamwork, that's a good poetic, that is. So everyone understand this? So you see, when the Quran mentions this, you have to see how it's kind of like fitting into this whole surah's, theme, which is this idea of superpowers being crushed and then Allah bringing them back again, reviving them again. And this idea of this happening is something that, whether the Muslim is a superpower, whether the non-Muslim is a superpower, something that we have to understand how human, like at the most basic level, how humans function, how societies are made. And if you want a society to work, this is what you have to have. You have to have these societies that have this, connection with each other. No matter how much a nation swells up in population and agriculture, He Almighty is still the Lord of all, definitely. Subhanallah. Connecting with like-minded people that have praiseworthy traits creates a successful community. Yeah, definitely. The mawadda and rahmah, I think, are very key. We need to study this in more detail. I mean, I remember once, I think it was Shaykh Taib ibn Ashur mentions that there's a very deep discussion on this. He says, I mentioned it from my teacher, but I don't know where he mentions it. This idea of mawaddatan wa rahmatan between two compatible people, how important it is to have mawadda and rahmah, for teamwork to actually work. And someone can actually, I believe someone can actually go through the Quran and find principles of like organizations, how organizations can be functioned around or set up around the principles of Quran. There's an emphasis, lakum min anfusikum. Allah could have simply said khalaqa azwajan. Yeah, definitely. Khalaqa lakum. Lakum is brought forward, definitely. Lakum. And we don't, maybe that this is indication towards this is not for animals. Animals don't have this, like animals don't have this system. Like if you ever heard of that film, Planet of the Apes, when the apes are able to create this whole community for the first time, and they have like this love for one another, they care for one another, and they have this mercy for one another, and they be able to structure themselves in such a way they can defeat the humans. If you think about that, this is obviously fables, fantasy, but in reality, humans, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, this is what was inculcated in the Sahaba, this love of ummah, love of the community, having mercy on your community. And you look at the attributes of Sahaba in the Quran, that when they are against their enemies, ashidda al-kufar, and when they are with their own ummah, they are ruhama'u baynahum. They are ruhama, they have this mercy. Mercy is very important for gelling individuals together. Okay, may Allah give us that. Anyway, I'll have to stop there because I've got to talk about Dajjal and I've got to set off. It's going to take me an hour to get there. So, Jazakumullah khair. If there's anything else you guys comes into your mind, put it in the comments now. I'm going to be on for about 5 minutes. So put in the comments. Let me know what kind of other bounties, because we haven't covered many bounties in this surah. There are loads of bounties that Allah mentions. But I want you to kind of look through the different bounties and try to think to yourself, look, how Allah mentions. I mean, think about it. Allah doesn't say mahabbatan here. And in the Quran, the word mahabba is used. The word mawadda is used. Why mawadda over here? Mawaddatan. And ja'ala baynakum didn't say ja'ala mawaddatan baynakum. Baynakum has been brought forward. Inna fi dhalika la'ayatin liqawmi yatafakkarun. There are signs for people. Many signs. Allah saying many signs. La'ayat. Definitely many signs for people who use their fikr. Tafakkur. So, Jazakumullah khair, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that and also benefit from this as well. Sorry for the lagging in the beginning. I think what I done was I actually reduced the latency of the connection. So that means that the quality might be slightly less than before, but at least the what's it will be good, inshallah. The flow, the stream, right, will be quite continuous. So anything else, guys, you want to add? No? Okay, Jazakumullah khair, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video, and hopefully, inshallah, I don't know about tomorrow if I'm going to be, if it is tomorrow, if we do have a reflections tomorrow, it's going to be again late at night, about 9ish, 9:30ish, that kind of time. Right, so if we do have one tomorrow, inshallah, that's when we're going to have it. This is why mawadda and rahmah are so important in marriage, because even when you are tired, stressed out, busy, you won't take out your frustration on your spouse because you have a rahmah towards them. Definitely. Yeah, exactly. So this kind of rahmah is a key thing for bringing a bond between any two people. Rahmah is a key. Yeah, that's why the Quran emphasizes it a lot. There's a lot of emphasis on it. And even Surah Fatiha, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Allah being the most merciful. This actually brings this emotional attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, you feel this powerful connection that you can't describe. Yeah, 9:30, yeah? Chalo, okay. Yeah, okay. Chalo, 9:30 will do. Yeah, because Khan says 9:30. Yeah, okay. Chalo, put the kids to sleep, inshallah. So 9:30, inshallah. So, okay, Jazakumullah khair, guys. And I will see you guys next time. And remember, if you have any questions or anything, you can put them in the comments below, or you can put it on Curious Cat as well. If you have any other thing that comes to your mind in the daytime, might be a good idea. Just maybe you can just put it in your phone or something, type it in, or write it on a piece of paper. And then when we have our next session, you can mention those as well. Because sometimes what happens is, you might get reflections even in salat, or even in, you might be eating food or something and you get a reflection, and you don't want to forget those reflections. You're welcome. Wa iyyakum wa iyyakum. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.